Hello, good evening, good morning, and good day to those joining in and tuning in for the CFF Live Davos program. This is our companion program for the Cyber Future Foundation dialogue annual dialogue event that happens in Davos, and we want to make sure that all of our community leaders are represented. We hear their voices, and today we have two of our really fantastic, amazing contributors and community leaders who do not miss a single meeting. Especially, the ones that we've started on are safe, and several others are on a regular basis continuing to contribute to the work that we do. So, Pamela, welcome to the program. Arunish, welcome to the program, and thank you for lending in your voice on top of all the contributions that you make throughout the year. I would love to you're starting kicking off the year with the Cyber Future Dialogue event, so wanted to get a thought of how did you see the year end, 2023 end, with respect to cybersecurity and your perspectives about um, the new year as well. Over to you, Pamela.
Yes, thank you, Val. I appreciate what you're doing and your presence at Davos, getting our voice heard as well. Um, there are so many different risks that are surfacing when it comes to emerging technology. Specifically, I'm referring to AI. And I think what 2023 highlighted and brought to a culmination is the fact that we really need a holistic and a concerted approach to these challenges. So, by what I mean specifically when it comes to cybersecurity and our world of leadership in leading and identifying, anticipating cybersecurity threats, what has become painfully clear is yet one, there is a unique landscape that we cannot treat it as with the same approach as an existing methods for security. And the other is cybersecurity itself, as in resting on confidentiality, integrity, and availability, has highly different connotations when it comes to AI. So, what it means for 2023 is not only do we, as leaders, have to recognize what are those differences, but most importantly, that the existing approach for risk management for cybersecurity will need a more holistic approach, so more stakeholders and a more we have to be more proactive in going out and identifying areas in the organizations that need our leadership, but nobody may be asking for it. So we'll have to kind of step up to the plate and identify what those risks are. Well,
Well, I think you're on mute.
Oh, that should have been done. Start the year with a mute button, unmute button function, right? Thank you, Pamela. I'm my cup that says "sun." I'm on mute. Good deal. But I think in general, broadly, your observations are broadly applicable to that across the board. So very true to the context. Arunish, what are your thoughts and recollections from 2023 to the industry?
Yeah, I think overall 2023 was a very interesting year. I mean, like similar to what Pamela was talking about. Not that we had already had like a bunch of issues and risks that were there on our hands. I mean, like then AI just came out of nowhere, and it's just making the life very complicated for the security leaders in different organizations. and and I think like one of my pet peeves about this one is we look at securing enterprises, right? The other aspect which is usually forgotten is how do you protect the society at large, right? When it talks about schools and non-profits and other stuff, right, where they're already facing like a shortage of talent resources. And I was reading somewhere that in one of the school boards they don't even have like a security line item in their budget, right? It's mostly infrastructure, and quite frankly, I think like it's a great opportunity as we go into like 2024. AI itself, if leveraged properly, can actually lend itself in so many different areas. And I think the effort that you have started within the CF for the responsible AI itself is very meaningful, right? How do you actually create model where security is kind of baked in, ethical checks are kind of baked into the development itself, right? And one of the interesting things that I see is across the vendor space, at least on the security, everybody is talking about how do I actually adopt AI within my platform itself and making it more seamless for my SOC or my security architecture teams itself to actually play around with that particular tool, have like a feel where uh, like fixing or even identifying the issues becomes very very key, especially if you see uh, going in and coming out is literally few minutes, right? You can actually create if I'm a hacker itself, right, I can go into an organization, take maybe like a minute or maybe take a few weeks, right? If my detection capabilities are very very robust, which is already happening in some of the areas when you look at EDR and MDR space itself, right? I think it's a golden opportunity. And even from application security perspective, right, it's becoming more and more critical. But at the same times, I think there are technologies and solutions coming which can detect your attack surface from outside, which is usually the first point of entry, right? So I think having more and more solutions coming out there, giving ability for organization to pick and choose the right set of technology and solutions, it also helps towards the end goal of like a tool consolidation. Instead of managing 50 different tools in organization, I want to actually create like an environment where I'm handling only a couple of solutions, whether myself or through like a service provider itself. So I think like I'm kind of very optimistic going into 2024 based on the learnings and observations from 2023.
Okay, excellent. I think you touched upon quite a few topics that we deal with at CFF on a regular basis, including the workforce and the talent. Uh, it's not just it's not the fact that talent is not available. It's like it's hard to find the right combination of skill sets. Okay? And if it was already a challenge for cybersecurity, I think with the AI advent and the acceleration of AI, it's going to be even more. Um, Pamela, any thoughts on specific topics that we should be looking at CFF in the coming year?
So I appreciate the effort on responsible AI that, as a CFF effort this year and has last year. The way I see it, my focus has been on trustworthy AI. And the way I see it, the EU AI Act is really drawing heightened attention to that. The way it relates to responsible AI is that you would have trustworthy AI in a responsible AI adoption or a environment in a company or organization, even if it's not a for profit. To Arnisha's point, but one thing I want to kind of highlight and kind of stress that what the EU AI Act represents is a very, very significant shift in AI governance.
Hmm.
And it affects US companies very much so, those that are offering AI products or services to EU residents. So it's a broad net, it's a wide net. And so, it is applicable to companies in US. I actually just wrote a white paper on the AI governance for a new era, and I highlight regulations, even those that are coming out of China, that we really should be paying attention to. But
Right.
coming back to EU and the significant shift that I was referring to, the challenge is that, we are actually now in very uncharted waters when it comes to the challenges. And it is not business as usual. So we can take risk management and cybersecurity and the issues that we are solving for. but it does have a lot of different connotations. So, for example, in the cybersecurity world, let me give an example from the cyber world because that's common ground here.
Hmm.
When we're talking about even things such as cybersecurity risks that are coming up with denial of service. That's something we all know and have dealt with. The Even if the concept is the same, that we are looking at denial of service, for example, for a generative AI implementation or a large language model implementation, the way the denial of service can be carried out, you can think about it as having exploded in terms of its connotations and its implementations. So,
Yeah.
for example, right? So if you can give it a circular reference, for example, and now that is something you would never think. It's not a TCP/IP overload, right? It's not a lot of traffic, but it is denial of service at a more subtle sense. We really have to understand the CISOs are faced with a really complex task of not only recognizing what has changed in terms of what all additional they need to take a look at, such as data provenance, data lineage, because systems are learning on that. But in addition to that, even things that are typically classified under cybersecurity, such as denial of service, how is it going to be different in this new world? And that's where the challenge is really going to come from. And the third, so it's the same attacks, let's say, but different connotations. More issues that we have to take a look at. Data provenance was never a under CISO's provenance,
Very true.
you know,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
right. And then there's the third, which is
And there's all
more
separate NDM team, data governance team that used to do that, and that was not necessarily with security or privacy in mind, right? It was mostly around business function. Yeah,
true, true. And so now, so that's what I was alluding to in my initial comment, that CISOs have to step up to the plate and say, where is the risk going to be coming from that I'm not actually doing, and who in the organization is looking at that? Is anyone looking at that? Because if it's everybody's responsibility, then it becomes nobody's responsibility, right? Then, so to be this, I think, to kind of sum it up, well, I see it as a golden opportunity for leadership, for security leadership, to take on additional perspective and importance in an organization and really clearly stake out, because we understand risk, right? We understand threats. We understand the cybersecurity threat model and the risk around that. Now, the this is the time where we can really shine and bring our expertise to protecting the organization at large by identifying areas that typically may not have come under the CISO role, but this is a golden opportunity to really step up to leadership.
for sure, for sure. Well, touche to that. I hope that people really take. See, this is a leadership roundtable and forum. I hope people take the leadership measures that you've provided. Definitely all of us are practitioners, but this is definitely a call to demonstrate leadership, take the responsibility, and the challenge, by by it horns, by its horn, and then address this, for the industry than specifically for the organization, because otherwise we'll be building point solutions for each of these. So thank you, Pamela. Really, really good insights. Well, Arunish, how about your thoughts for 2024 as we shape up, the projects and programs we have?
Yeah, I think piggybacking again on what Vamana was talking about, I think 2024 presents itself with like a lot of different opportunities, and I think like it's important to also realize the regulations that are coming in different areas, right? And if you can just only focus on the AI side of things, right? So many regulations are going to come EU was one of the, then your executive order in the US was another one.
Mhm.
I think it's important to take like a very holistic picture into mind, right? And really understand your risk within your organization. And I think it was rightfully done so in 2023, where most of the organization were on the back foot before taking on AI and Gen AI into their platform. I think it's very important for organization to really understand the use cases, the risk involved in that one. And I personally know like two organizations which started using Gen AI, and it was completely scrapped because the risk was more than the reward itself, right? So I think 2023 was the time to actually really understand the space itself, understand the risk, and let 2024 be the year where you can actually say, okay, yes, I'm ready to embrace Gen AI, but I also know the risk involved. So my use cases and my business plans needs to kind of adhere to that one. And the checks and balances that are required, whether it's for the LLMs or availability, all those things are going to be important, right? And I think one another thing that's going to be important these days is the LLM that you're building, whether you're building it in-house or you're sourcing it from outside. The BCP becomes very, very important. Like, what if your LLM goes down, right? We cannot, just like cloud. Uh, I mean, like, you need to at least say, okay, you need to have like some sort of a, not like a multi-cloud, but some sort of a strategy. Okay, if something goes down, right, how do you actually recover from those losses? Because you really have like active clients or active like prospects out there, right? If there is a
Yeah.
down, if something goes down, it's hits the Twitter literally the same minute itself, right? So it's going to be
Yeah, incident
important for
response nowadays
organization.
is through Twitter than by anywhere else, right? Especially detection in India jobs.
And another aspect is, coming from a more of a development background, the code generation aspect is really critical. It's an opportunity for organization to improve their processes. The test coverage, all those things are important, but I think that at the same time, you need to be looking at the copyright infringement. And quite frankly, none of this has surfaced so far. And even though most of the LLMs out there would say it, there is they would kind of protect the consumers from lawsuits, but I think it has to be watched very, very carefully. Let's say
Yeah.
you need one breach, and then you'll see like most of the LMs are going to be on the back foot, right?
Yeah, and I think there is no guarantees here that anybody will be covered. I think just the expectation or even the concept of guarantee here is really laughable. So I think 2024 we'll see uh, you know some of those cases come up probably just to see people putting too much of their faith in somebody's going to get this right, but most of the time somebody's going to get this wrong. So we will see 2024 to be very active as a consequence of what will happen in 2023 with early adoption of Gen AI, very, very early adoption of Gen AI. Well, good deal. So, maybe we wind this up with your thoughts for colleagues who are visiting Davos, and anything specific you want us to kind of dig into, especially in the AI area or broadly in the cyber area.
Um, I think I'll go first now. That's the trend we've been following. Yeah, I think looking at what WEF came out with the risks for, the risk report, and they've laid out AI as well as cybersecurity as in the top five. One thing that I am seeing also a reference to, which is extremely important, is let me just shut this. I'm sorry. Um, Risks from AI, right? We are talking about these being socio-technical systems. So we are talking about how do we look at the risk 360 degrees. And one of the things that we've not really addressed in the security community is how AI can be manipulative, and we're already seeing instances of that, right? Which was mentioned in the UK AI summit as to what can be risk in terms of. So, for example, ChatGPT was able to, in a test environment, was able to fool a human being into reading a captcha for the computer because it doesn't have the ability to uh, uh, reliably read that. And that's an example of where, what, when we're looking at risk, when we're looking at putting controls in place, to have those conversations across the organization and really look at it from a risk based perspective is critical. One thing also to note is the focus between EU AI Act and the US position coming through with the executive order and the blueprint that they laid out, the White House laid out, is a very different position. So we are going to, the U.S. companies are going to be in an extremely difficult position where now you have to navigate which one do they, how do you marry the two, right? How do you create a risk approach and a cybersecurity and a overall AI risk posturing, which addresses both of them? And I am happy to send you a white paper on that too, Val, on what is the difference between what we have to do for the EU and the US approaches. One is focus, US is based more on focusing more on build it right, build AI securely, build it with the right controls in place, whereas EU is saying we're going to take a look at what is high risk, what is um, prohibited risk when it comes to AI system. Very different approach. It's going to require a different approach in um, setting the controls in place and creating that strategic approach. So it's not good. This is going to be, I would say, on a complexity side, it's going to be highly complex, and just in navigating the regulation in regulatory environment. But in terms of what we can expect coming out of that is the more strategic it is, and the more we look at the entire regulatory climate, the business environment, the what are the intended outcomes right at the outset. That is really the only way to proceed going forward. So, well, I won't keep you any further. You've been really good to host this. I know you've been traveling to India, and now you're in Davos, so you're
Right.
obviously
Thank you,
yeah. Okay, let me pass it over to Arunish.
Sure. Good, Arunish, close us out.
Yeah, I think the similar that we have been talking for the last half an hour. I think like personally, within the security space, I see a lot of duplications around, especially with the regulations. If you take like commonality between HIPAA, PCI, and other stuff, right? The same thing happens within the AI side of things, right? Positioning of U.S. government or the UK or other regions in Asia Pacific, right? uh, I would expect like most of the governments would kind of like collaborate more and more and say, okay, these are the common elements for AI itself, right? Whether it's for ethical or do it right or de-risking the adoption, right? I think that there needs to be like a common framework or a common set of elements that apply to different frameworks. I would see like more and more of this happening, hopefully, especially with some of the engagement that I'm involved with CISA as part of a different initiative. I would assume like most of the governments would kind of come together in certain fashion. And I think like forums like WEF are important forums where this can be collectively discussed. And you have like participation from different countries and regions, right? And in 2023, we saw like a lot of areas of hallucination, for example, for the model, right? And there are like a lot of newsworthy articles or event that happened. I would assume that there's going to be more onus on the vendors for the AI vendors to actually address those shortcomings itself, like for prompt injection or something where you can actually reverse engineer models. I think there's going to be more onus for vendors who are providing AI services, and also at the same time, enterprise also needs to be uh, aware what's at risk, right?
Okay, good deal. So I think some of these are very first principles on questions and issues that seem simple but very hard to solve. Not only the short term, but but for the long term. Um, as much as we are grappling with other topics, AI just came and painted a completely different picture last year. So I think, considering the work that we're doing together, in the working group, and then with other partners in the industry, I'm sure there will be a ton of work that could come out of this and be really productive in terms of making an impact. So thank you both. Hope to see you soon, and I hope that this message is very well received. It absolutely resounded with me, and I hope it's very well received with the community that's joining us, not only just the CFF community, but the extended friends and network that we with at Davos, because each of these topics that show the true spirit of what is possible, or what we have learned in 2023, and what you're going to do in 2024. So you all have a wonderful day, rest of the day. I'll see you next time. Thank you for joining us this day. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you, Val.